The stars over the blue planet did not warn anyone before the fleet appeared. One moment the sky above Earth was empty and calm, and the next moment hundreds of alien ships blinked into view, spreading out like a slow-moving storm cloud made of metal. Deep in the void, Commander Ilra Kesh stood near a curved window on her flagship, watching the planet grow larger through the glass. Her scales shimmered faintly under the ship's pale lighting as she studied the world below. It looked peaceful, too peaceful. For years, every map used by the Verdane Concord had marked this system with a single word: forbidden. No trade routes passed through it. No colony ships were sent here. Old records spoke only of silence, and warning beacons that had floated in the dark for centuries, repeating the same message over and over: stay away. Ilra had grown up hearing stories about this place, the kind adults used to frighten young cadets during training. They called it the Deathworld, though nobody could say why. She always assumed it was superstition, a leftover fear from some forgotten disaster. Now the beacons were silent. That was the reason her fleet had been sent here in the first place. Something had shut them down, and the Concord Council wanted answers. Ilra turned to her science officer, a thin, calm man named Tuvan, who was watching a wall of scanners with quiet focus. "What do you see down there?" she asked. Tuvan adjusted a dial and frowned slightly. "Cities, farms, oceans full of ships. A civilization clearly advanced enough to build large structures and manage global systems. But Commander, look at this." He pointed to a section of the display. "Their military presence is almost nothing. A handful of old satellites. No visible orbital defenses. No warships waiting for us." "That doesn't match the warnings," Ilra said. "No," Tuvan agreed. "It doesn't." She stared down at the planet again, trying to make sense of the contradiction. A species with almost no visible defense, living inside a sector the entire galaxy had learned to avoid for generations. Either the old warnings were empty myths, exaggerated over time until they became legend, or something here was hidden very well. General Brachthuvan, a broad-shouldered officer standing near the command console, made a low sound of disbelief. "This is what frightened explorers for 200 years. A world with no army." He crossed his arms. "I think the ancient reports were wrong, or exaggerated by fear." Ilra did not answer right away. She had learned, over many years of service, that calm surfaces sometimes hid deep water. But she also understood that the Concord Council would not accept caution without evidence. They wanted contact, and they wanted it soon. "Prepare a communication signal," she finally said. "We will announce our presence peacefully and see how they respond." The message was sent in the universal greeting code used across 100 different worlds, a simple pattern of light and sound meant to say, "We come without weapons raised, we wish to speak." For a long moment, there was no answer. The bridge crew waited in silence, watching the massive planet turn slowly beneath them, its clouds drifting like nothing important was happening at all. Then, without any static or delay, a voice came through the speakers. It was calm, human, and startlingly clear, as if the speaker had expected this exact moment for a very long time. "This is Earth Control," the voice said. "We see you. You are welcome to approach, but please hold your current position until landing coordinates are confirmed." The bridge crew exchanged uncertain glances. There was no fear in that voice, no confusion, no panic at the sight of an alien fleet appearing above their world. Only calm instruction, delivered the way a person might give directions to a lost traveler. Van laughed under his breath. "They sound almost bored." Ilra did not find it funny. In her long career, she had encountered many species making first contact for the first time, and nearly all of them reacted with some mixture of excitement, fear, or aggression. She had never heard a species respond with such simple, practiced calm, as if alien fleets showed up in their sky all the time. "Send confirmation," she said quietly. "Tell them we accept." As the ships began adjusting their orbit, following the coordinates given by Earth Control, Tuvan leaned closer to his display, his brow furrowed in concentration. "Commander," he said, "there's something else. I'm picking up structures beneath the surface in several major cities. Large ones. They don't match anything in our records for civilian infrastructure." Ilra felt a small, cold prickle of unease crawl along her spine, the kind of feeling that came from instincts sharpened over decades of service. "Keep watching them," she said. And keep this information between us for now. Outside the window, Earth continued turning below them, blue and green and quiet, giving no outward sign of danger. Yet something about its calmness felt less like peace and more like patience, the kind shown by someone who was not worried because they already knew exactly what they were capable of. Ilra watched the planet a while longer, and for the first time since she had taken command of this fleet, a small part of her wondered if the old stories, dismissed for so long as myths, might have been built from something far more real than anyone in the Concord wanted to admit. A small transport shuttle broke away from the alien fleet and dropped slowly through Earth's atmosphere, cutting through soft clouds until a wide green valley came into view. The shuttle landed in an open field near a modest building surrounded by trees, far from any large city. Ilra had expected a show of ceremony, or perhaps a nervous crowd of officials waiting behind armed guards. Instead, only a small group of people stood near the landing site, dressed in plain clothing, without a single visible weapon among them. At the front of the group stood a woman with steady eyes and a calm expression, introduced simply as Dana Whitfield. She stepped forward as the shuttle's ramp lowered, offering a slight nod instead of any dramatic greeting. "Welcome to Earth," she said. "We hope your journey was smooth." Ilra studied her carefully as she walked down the ramp, Tuvin and two guards following close behind. Dana's tone held no fear, no forced politeness meant to hide nervousness. She spoke the way someone might speak to expected guests, not strange visitors from across the galaxy. "Thank you for the welcome," Ilra replied carefully. "We did not expect such an open reception." Dana offered a small, knowing smile. "We've had time to prepare for this moment. Please, come inside. We have food, water, and a place to rest, if you need it." The building turned out to be simple but comfortable, filled with soft lighting and long tables set with unfamiliar food. Ilra accepted an offered seat, watching everything closely, while Tuvin quietly scanned the room with a small device hidden inside his sleeve. During the meal, conversation stayed light. Dana asked polite questions about their journey, their fleet, and their home worlds, answering questions about Earth's culture and history in return. Yet Ilra noticed something odd. Every answer Dana gave felt careful, measured, like a person walking along the edge of a much larger truth without ever stepping over the line. Later that evening, back aboard the flagship, Tuvin approached Ilra with troubled eyes. "Commander, I finished analyzing the readings from the surface," he said. "Those buried structures I mentioned earlier are not isolated. They exist beneath nearly every major population center on the planet. Massive, dormant, and completely shielded from most scanning methods." "Do we know what they are?" Ilra asked. "No," Tuvin admitted. "But whatever they are, they were built to remain hidden and inactive unless triggered. That is not something a species builds for defense against wild animals or natural disasters." Ilra crossed her arms, thinking, "It's something they built for us, or for someone like us." Before Tuvin could answer, alarms flashed briefly on a nearby console. A junior officer rushed over, his voice tense. "Commander, Scout Team 4 has left formation. They are heading toward a restricted coordinate marked on the planet's surface, ignoring hold orders." Ilra's stomach tightened. "Who authorized that?" "No one, Commander. They went on their own." She turned sharply toward the display, watching a small blip representing the scout ship break away from the fleet's holding pattern and descend rapidly toward the restricted zone below, a location Earth Control had specifically marked as forbidden during the earlier exchange. "Get them back," she snapped. "Now." But before any recall signal could be sent, the scout ship suddenly changed course on its own, smoothly, and without any visible impact or explosion. It simply turned, as though guided by an invisible hand, and began flying back toward the fleet's holding position. The bridge fell silent. No weapons had fired. No violence had occurred. Yet the ship had clearly been redirected by something far more advanced than anything Ilra had ever seen. Something powerful enough to control another vessel from a distance without leaving a single mark of damage. General Van, who had been watching from across the bridge, stepped forward with a hard expression. "That should be impossible," he said. "No technology in known space can redirect a ship that cleanly without triggering an alarm or leaving a trace." "And yet it happened," Ilra said quietly. A message soon arrived from Earth Control, delivered in the same calm tone as before. We understand accidents happen. Please remind your pilots to stay within approved zones. We would prefer to avoid unnecessary incidents. The casual politeness of the message, following such an impossible display of control, sent a chill through the entire bridge crew. Van's jaw tightened, clearly frustrated by the humiliation, though he said nothing further. Ilra stared out at the planet again, its surface glowing faintly under the light of its single moon. The old warnings, the buried structures, the effortless control over an alien warship. Piece by piece, the picture forming in her mind grew more troubling. Whatever Earth truly was, it was not the fragile, primitive world it appeared to be on the surface. And whatever secret it was hiding beneath its calm exterior, Ilra had the growing feeling that the Concord fleet was standing far closer to danger than any of them realized. General Brachthu Van did not believe in patience, and after the strange incident with the scout ship, his patience had run out completely. He requested a private meeting with a small circle of trusted officers, away from Ilra Kesh and the diplomatic team, held in a sealed room deep inside his own warship. The lighting was dim, and the mood was tense. "We are being tested," Van said, pacing slowly in front of the small group. That so-called redirection was a trick, a clever piece of technology meant to make us doubt ourselves. If we accept it without question, we hand them control of this entire negotiation before it even begins. One of his officers, a quiet woman named Cyril, folded her arms. "Commander Kesh believes we should proceed carefully." "Commander Kesh," Van said with a thin smile, "is cautious to the point of weakness. I respect her experience, but experience without action accomplishes nothing." He stopped pacing and looked around the room. "I propose a controlled demonstration. Nothing large. A show of strength, enough to test their true capabilities without risking full conflict." Cyril frowned. "That could be seen as an act of war." "It will be seen as a warning," Van corrected. "A message that we are not a species to be toyed with." Despite quiet objections from a few officers, Van's authority within his own command structure was enough to move forward. Without informing Ilra or the full council, he ordered a small squadron of combat drones prepared for launch, aimed at an uninhabited stretch of coastline near one of Earth's coastal cities. The plan was simple: fly close, demonstrate firepower against open water, and retreat before any real damage was done. A message meant to say, "We are stronger than you think." The drones launched quietly, slipping through the atmosphere with practiced precision. From high above, Van watched the display on his command console, arms crossed, confident in his decision. The drones approached the coastline exactly as planned. Then, without warning, every single one of them went dark at once. No explosions, no visible weapons fire, no dramatic flashes of light. The drones simply stopped, frozen in midair for a brief moment, before gently drifting down into the ocean like toys with their batteries removed. The entire squadron, disabled within seconds, without a single shot being fired in return. On the bridge of the flagship, Ilra Kesh, who had been informed at the very last moment by a nervous officer, watched the display with a controlled, simmering anger. "Get me Van," she said sharply. "Now." When Van finally appeared on the display screen, Ilra's voice was low and dangerous. "You launched an unauthorized attack without informing me or the council." "It was not an attack," Van said calmly. "A demonstration. They disabled an entire squadron without firing a single weapon." Ilra snapped. "That is not primitive defense, General. That is complete control over technology far beyond our own, and you handed them the perfect excuse to use it." Before Van could respond, a new transmission arrived from Earth Control, addressed directly to the fleet. Dana Whitfield's voice came through, calm as always, but firmer than before. "We understand mistakes happen during first encounters. Your drones were disabled, not destroyed, and no harm was caused. However, we ask that you understand something clearly. We do not wish for conflict. We have avoided the wider galaxy for a very long time because we know what conflict costs. But we will not allow ourselves to be tested twice." The message ended there, without threats, without anger, yet somehow more unsettling than any warning filled with rage could have been. Ilra closed the channel and turned toward Van's image still frozen on the secondary screen. "You've confirmed what I feared, General. This world is not weak. It is choosing not to show us its full strength, even after your provocation." Van's expression hardened, though a flicker of uncertainty crossed his eyes. Then we should learn why. For once, Ilra said coldly, we agree. Later that night, alone in her quarters, Ilra reviewed the sensor logs from the failed drone attack over and over. There was no trace of energy weapons, no visible technology used to disable the squadron. Whatever Earth had used, it left no signature the Concord scanners could identify at all. She thought back to the calm voice that greeted them upon arrival, the buried structures scattered beneath every major city, and the ship redirected without damage. Piece by piece, a picture was forming, not of a weak, primitive world hiding out of fear, but of a species carefully, deliberately choosing restraint. Ilra made a decision. Diplomacy alone would not be enough to understand this world. She needed the truth, directly from the people who called this planet home, before someone like Van pushed them past the limit of their patience and turned quiet restraint into something far more dangerous. She requested a private meeting with Earth's leadership, determined to learn exactly what history had shaped a civilization capable of such calm, controlled power. Rain fell softly outside the tall windows of a quiet meeting hall, tapping gently against the glass as Ilra Kesh took her seat across from a small group of human representatives. The room felt different from the open field where she had first landed, more formal, yet still simple compared to the grand halls used for Concord meetings back home. An older man with graying hair and calm, patient eyes sat near the center of the group, introduced as Robert Hale, a historian chosen to speak on behalf of humanity's past. You asked to understand us, Robert began, folding his hands on the table. That is a fair request, considering everything your fleet has witnessed since arriving. I will try to explain as clearly as I can. Ilra nodded. I would appreciate that. Robert took a slow breath before continuing. Humanity's history has never been peaceful. Long before we ever looked toward the stars, we fought countless wars among ourselves, over land, resources, beliefs, and pride. For centuries, conflict shaped nearly every part of our civilization. We built weapons capable of destroying entire cities, then slowly, painfully, learned to step back from the edge of destroying ourselves completely. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle before continuing. By the time we finally found unity among our own nations, we believed the hardest lessons were behind us. We were wrong. Ilra leaned forward slightly. What happened? First contact, Robert said simply. Long before your fleet arrived, another species found us. Unlike your Concord, they did not come with open communication or offers of peace. They came with the intention to conquer. The room grew quiet. Dana Whitfield, seated beside Robert, watched Ilra's reaction carefully as the historian continued. They believed us weak, Robert said. Primitive, easy to control. They attacked without warning, expecting quick surrender. Instead, they found a species that had already spent generations learning how to survive against impossible odds, simply by surviving each other. The war that followed was long, brutal, and cost us more than most records from that era can even properly measure. You won, Ilra said quietly. We survived, Robert corrected gently. There is a difference. Victory came at a terrible price, one that shaped every decision humanity has made since. After that war ended, our leaders made a choice. We would not announce ourselves to the wider galaxy. We would not seek attention, alliances, or exploration beyond what was necessary. Instead, we would prepare quietly, build strength in silence, and wait until we were ready to face the stars on our own terms. Ilra sat back, processing everything she had just heard. It explained so much. The buried structures hidden beneath every city were not simple infrastructure, but layered defense systems built over decades. The lack of visible military was not weakness, but a deliberate disguise meant to discourage curiosity from anyone passing through their marked, forbidden sector. The warning beacons, Ilra said slowly. They weren't left behind by fear. They were left behind by choice. Dana nodded. We wanted to be left alone, Commander Kesh. Not because we were afraid of the galaxy, but because we understood exactly what unwanted attention could cost us. We had already paid that price once. Tuvan, seated quietly beside Ilra throughout the conversation, finally spoke. The technology used to disable General Van's drones. Was that also built during that time? Some of it, Robert admitted. Though our defenses have continued evolving since. We test them regularly, refine them constantly. What you witnessed was not our full capability. It was simply enough to make our position clear without escalating into something neither of us wants. Ilra studied the humans seated before her, no longer seeing a fragile, primitive society hiding in fear, but a civilization built from hard, painful lessons, choosing patience and control over aggression, despite clearly possessing the power to respond with force if needed. "Why tell us this now?" she asked. "You could have continued hiding your history, kept your true strength secret." Robert exchanged a glance with Dana before answering. "Because General Van's attack proved something important. Secrecy alone cannot protect peace forever. Eventually, someone impatient enough will test us again, perhaps with far greater force. We would rather build understanding now, while there is still a path toward peaceful cooperation, than wait for a mistake large enough to destroy that chance completely." Ilra respected the honesty in that answer more than she expected to. She had come into this meeting searching for the truth behind Earth's calm defiance, and instead found something far more complex. A species shaped by suffering, choosing wisdom over vengeance, patience over pride. As the meeting came to a close, Ilra rose from her seat, offering a respectful nod toward Robert and Dana. "Thank you for trusting us with this history." "Trust is earned slowly," Dana replied. "Consider this the beginning, not the end." Outside, the rain continued falling gently over the quiet valley, while far above, hidden deep within his own command ship, General Van sat alone in the dark, reviewing old Concord battle plans with a growing, dangerous determination of his own. Far beyond the edge of Earth's system, hidden behind the pale light of a distant moon, a second Concord fleet waited in silence. General Brackthu Van had spent weeks quietly arranging its arrival, using old connections and borrowed authority to gather warships without informing the Council or Commander Ilra Kesh. He believed the meeting between Ilra and the human historian had been a mistake, a moment of weakness disguised as wisdom. To him, Earth's calm restraint was not proof of strength, but proof that they were unwilling to escalate, and unwillingness, in his mind, was simply another word for vulnerability. Under the cover of a routine supply transfer, Van's personal fleet slipped into position, moving silently toward Earth's system without triggering any official Concord alert. His plan was simple and, in his mind, justified. Strike quickly, seize whatever technology allowed Earth to disable Concord ships so effortlessly, and present the Council with undeniable proof of victory before anyone could question his methods. The fleet dropped out of warp directly above Earth's orbit, catching both the original Concord fleet and Earth's forces by surprise. Alarms blared across Ilra's flagship as the unfamiliar warships appeared without warning, weapons already charging. "Identify that fleet," Ilra shouted, rushing toward the command console. Tuvin's fingers moved quickly across his display, eyes widening as the data resolved. "Commander, those are Concord vessels, registered under General Van's personal command authority." Ilra's stomach dropped. He wouldn't. But the proof floated silently above them, weapons systems fully active, aimed directly at the planet below. Van's voice crackled over an open channel, calm and confident. "This ends now. Earth will submit, or it will burn." Before Ilra could respond, Van's fleet opened fire, unleashing a coordinated assault meant to overwhelm Earth's defenses in a single, decisive strike. For a brief moment, nothing happened. Then, the sky itself seemed to shift. Massive orbital platforms, previously hidden beneath simple satellite disguises, unfolded with smooth, practiced precision. Cloaked interceptor ships, invisible until now, decloaked in perfect formation around Van's fleet. Deep beneath Earth's surface, the buried structures Tuvin had discovered weeks earlier activated at last, sending pulses of coordinated energy upward through the atmosphere, guiding Earth's full defense network into action within seconds. Van's warships found themselves surrounded, outmaneuvered, and overwhelmed almost instantly. Weapons fire aimed at the planet was intercepted before it ever reached the surface. Engines were disabled with the same strange, precise control used against the earlier scout ship and drone squadron, except now applied on a massive scale. Within minutes, Van's fleet was crippled, ships drifting powerless in orbit, their weapons silenced, their engines dark. Yet, Despite complete control over the situation, Earth's forces did not destroy a single ship. No hull was breached. No lives were lost. The attacking fleet was simply, completely disarmed, left floating helplessly above the world they had tried to conquer. Dana Whitfield's voice came through the main channel moments later, calm as always, though firmer than Ilra had ever heard it before. General Van, your fleet has been disabled. We are choosing restraint, not because we lack the ability to end this conflict entirely, but because we do not wish for this moment to define the future between our peoples. Stand down. Van, humiliated and furious, had no choice but to comply. His remaining crew, shaken by how effortlessly their assault had been stopped, offered no resistance as Concord Council authorities were formally notified of the unauthorized attack. Back aboard her own flagship, Ilra worked quickly alongside Tuven, broadcasting a full report to the Concord Council, detailing Van's unauthorized fleet movement and the devastating consequences it nearly caused. She made sure to include every detail of Earth's restrained response, refusing to hide the truth even though it painted her own military in an unflattering light. Word spread quickly across Concord channels. A general had acted without authority, launched an unprovoked attack against a peaceful world, and been stopped without a single casualty by a species that could have easily destroyed his entire fleet in retaliation. Van was placed under arrest by his own officers before Concord enforcement ships even arrived, his authority stripped, his reputation shattered beyond recovery. Ilra stood quietly near the observation window later that evening, watching the damaged remains of Van's fleet slowly towed away under Concord's supervision. Earth's calm, controlled response had done more to prove its strength than any show of aggression ever could have. It had also revealed something else, something Ilra found herself both humbled and reassured by. Humanity did not seek war. It sought only the freedom to choose peace on its own terms, without being forced into conflict by those too impatient or too proud to understand restraint. Ilra realized that the true lesson of this encounter was not about power at all, but about the discipline required to hold that power back, even when provoked. As the last remnants of Van's disgraced fleet disappeared into the darkness, Ilra turned toward Tuven with a quiet, determined resolve. "We have much to learn from this world," she said softly, "and I intend to make sure the rest of the Concord learns it as well." Weeks passed after General Van's failed attack, and news of the incident spread far beyond the borders of the Verdane Concord. Other species across the galaxy, some who had never even heard of Earth before, began quietly asking questions about the world once marked as forbidden on every star chart. What kind of civilization could disable an entire invading fleet without killing a single soldier? What kind of species chose mercy after being attacked without warning? Inside the grand meeting chamber of the Concord Council, located on a distant space station far from Earth's system, representatives from dozens of member worlds gathered to address the incident formally. Ilra Kesh stood before them, having been asked personally to present her full account of everything that had happened since the fleet's arrival. She spoke clearly and honestly, describing Earth's calm greeting, its hidden defenses, the failed provocation ordered by General Van, and the devastating, yet restrained response that followed his unauthorized invasion attempt. She did not exaggerate Earth's power, nor did she minimize the danger Van's reckless actions had created for the entire Concord. When she finished speaking, the chamber remained silent for a long moment before the presiding council elder finally spoke. "This body formally condemns General Van's actions," the elder declared, "and extends a sincere, complete apology to the people of Earth for the unauthorized attack carried out in our name." Murmurs of agreement spread through the chamber. Several representatives, some previously dismissive of the mysterious Deathworld sector, now leaned forward with genuine curiosity, eager to understand more about a species capable of such disciplined strength. A formal request followed shortly after, extended through Ilra as the Concord's chosen representative, an offer of peaceful, permanent diplomatic relations between Earth and the wider galactic community, built on mutual respect rather than domination or fear. Back on Earth, the offer was received with careful consideration. Dana Whitfield, Robert Hale, and a small council of human leaders debated the proposal for several days before reaching a decision. Humanity had spent generations preparing quietly for a moment like this, and they had no intention of rushing forward carelessly, even with a formal apology already extended. In the end, Earth agreed to slowly step out of isolation, but strictly on its own terms. Diplomatic channels would open gradually. Limited trade agreements would be considered only after careful study. Earth would share select knowledge with the Concord, while continuing to closely guard the deeper secrets behind its defense systems. Unwilling to expose its full strength to a galaxy it was still learning to trust. Dana Whitfield was chosen as Earth's first official ambassador to the Concord, a role she accepted with quiet determination. In turn, the Concord Council appointed Ilra Kesh as their official liaison to Earth, recognizing the deep understanding she had built with humanity throughout the entire crisis. The two women met often in the months that followed, discussing trade proposals, cultural exchanges, and slow, careful steps toward greater cooperation. What began as cautious negotiation between two very different species gradually grew into a genuine friendship, built on shared respect rather than empty formality. During one quiet evening meeting, held in the same simple building where Ilra had first landed months earlier, Dana looked out toward the darkening sky, stars beginning to appear above the valley. "You once asked me why we chose to hide," Dana said softly. "I think it's time I gave you a fuller answer." Ilra turned toward her, listening carefully. "We didn't hide because we were afraid of the galaxy," Dana continued. "We hid because we needed time. Time to heal from what happened before you arrived. Time to build strength without repeating old mistakes. Time to decide, on our own, when and how we wanted to step forward, instead of being forced into the spotlight before we were ready." Ilra nodded slowly, understanding the weight behind those words far more deeply now than she had during their first meeting. "And now," Dana offered a small, genuine smile. "Now we're ready. Not because the danger is gone, but because we've learned how to face it without losing who we are." Far across the galaxy, news of Earth's emergence continued spreading among countless worlds, sparking debate, curiosity, and cautious respect in equal measure. The so-called Deathworld, once feared and avoided for generations, was no longer seen as a mysterious threat lurking at the edge of known space. Instead, it was recognized as the quiet, patient home of a remarkable species, one that had endured hardship, mastered restraint, and finally chosen to step forward into the wider galaxy, not out of weakness or desperation, but out of hard-earned confidence. As the last light of evening faded over the peaceful valley, Ilra Kesh looked out at the darkening sky beside her newfound friend, knowing that this quiet, unassuming world had changed the future of the entire galaxy, simply by choosing, at last, to come out of hiding.